Welcome to MILF,
I'm Courtney,
and I'm Jennifer.
and we are two moms into literary freedom. Hey, Jennifer, I feel so fancy now that we have like a real Zoom account.
We're not limited to time anymore, so
It's
expect this to
so
be a very long podcast now.
right. We're going to record for 3 straight hours directly to your ears. You can listen to our voices can lull you to sleep.
Right. We need to add like the soft music and everything. People are like, no, you bore us enough already.
No need for the
Fine.
the soft music. Oh man. But no, in all seriousness, we made a little bit of money. And when I say a little bit of money, I mean a little bit of money.
Subscription for Zoom money. That's
Yeah.
it.
Maybe we can get like new microphones in a couple months. I don't know. But we made some money because we did start to add ads into our episodes. But if you don't like ads, we got you. You can go over to our Patreon account. And join the Milfia because we have a Milfia now, and we would love for you to join.
Yeah, be a part of the family.
The family, I love that. We're a family. But yeah, we talked about this on the last episode, so I'll keep it quick. But join the Milfia, you'll have not only ad-free content, but like firsthand access to any merch that we come up with, whether it's a tote bag or a t-shirt that Jennifer makes or a coffee mug that I make. And we're also toying with the idea of having a monthly book club if we get enough members to sign up, where we have a live Zoom call with our family members, our Milfia family,
With La Familia.
and and we talk about whatever book you want. So yeah.
Yeah, you get to vote on what book. I
Mhm.
just added that. I don't know if that's possible.
No, it is. No, you that was a good idea that you had. And I was sure when I was setting up the Patreon page, I was sure to add that as like part of the tier. There's only one tier. It's the Milfia tier.
That's it. It's the only option. It's
Yep.
quick and simple.
Yep. So yeah, go ahead and do that. If you're not into that, you can click that little 30-second button on your listening device and it'll skip right through those ads because they're just 30-second ads. So, but yeah, we actually just got done recording another interview. So earlier this week, we recorded an interview with somatic psychotherapist and certified sex therapist. I got that title correct. Dr. Holly Richmond, and when we were talking about sexual education. So that episode is ready for you to listen. And just a few hours ago, or actually it's more like 1 hour ago, we interviewed young activist and local celebrity here in Flagler, Jack Petos. And that was
Yeah.
a really good interview, I thought.
I thought it was really good. Yeah. That's
Mm-hmm.
lots of great information he's going to put out
Mm-hmm.
for actions that we can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all that information will be in the show notes of that episode. And I think this episode, I'm going to be telling Jennifer about the graphic novel adaptation of Anne Frank's diary. This is the first graphic novel adaptation. I think there's a couple more, but this one was like 2017, I think. Um, and I mean, I think it's the best one because it was it was a project by the foundation that her dad created. Obviously he was the only survivor of the Anne Frank
Right.
family, and so he dedicated his life to honoring her memory and sharing her story. And so that organization, which I don't have the name handy, but it was like something about the Anne Frank organization. Sounds right. Um, Worked together to create this beautiful graphic novel with these beautiful illustrations that really honors her writing prowess. Like she is an amazing writer, and you'd think, oh, like why are you reading the graphic novel? Like, don't you want all of her words? You're kind of like skipping over the most important part of her diary. But no, like her words are very much still alive in this book. They're just paired with really, really beautiful illustrations. So,
Right. And graphic novels are what kids like to read nowadays. So
mhm.
it's a great way to get kids to read her
Yes,
her story.
for sure. Yeah, I was more just making an excuse for myself as an adult. Who's like, no, I'm not going to read. I want to read the graphic. And I was thinking about that. I was like, is it because I'm a visual person or is it because I'm lazy?
No, I think visual.
Thank you. Let's go with visual.
Yeah, I'm going with visual.
Yeah.
Give yourself some credit, girl.
Thank you. Yeah. And like, I'm an, amateur artist, whatever. I taught art school 1 year. Actually, no, I taught art for 3 years at the high school level. So I don't know. I think there's something to say about, us readers and our graphic novels that really appreciate art. It's just so pretty. And
Yeah, and it brings the story to life.
hmm
Same way I love audiobooks. People say that that doesn't count as reading, but it helps me focus on the story. It brings the story to life.
yeah,
I feel like graphic novels do the same thing. All
hmm
reading is reading and it all counts.
I agree.
I
Yeah.
will fight you if you disagree.
Yeah.
So,
Listen, don't pick a fight with Jennifer. I've seen her mad. But no, yeah, don't mess with Jennifer's audiobooks because like how else are you supposed to like life, and mom,
yeah.
with, and but also like read these books. So yeah, I agree for sure, 100%. But we're gonna try and relate this episode a little bit to, what's going on and why books like this are so important. But before we do that, this book, the illustrated version, but also just the non-illustrated version, has obviously been censored, challenged, and censored in districts across the country. Do you know of any, Jennifer? And
I know that there was a teacher that was fired in Texas. That was in September of 2023,
oh my God,
for showing the book in her classroom.
which I mean, not that it matters really, but I mean, I guess it does matter. Like, what grade was it? Does it say?
Let me see if I could find that. I was hoping that article would say it. Eighth grade students,
Oh my God.
definitely old enough to see this.
Yeah, that is just ridiculous. I mean, there is so it's also been challenged, surprise, surprise, in Florida by surprise, surprise, Moms for Liberty.
Stalker.
Yeah, Moms for Liberty leader Jennifer Pippin. Was she the one in the three-way, or was that someone else?
No, she's the one in Brevard who
Oh,
had the issue with, wait, is that her? I think that's her.
hmm.
With the books of like babies and butts,
Oh
or
yeah,
if you had them draw like overalls on them.
she's the one that had them put overalls on
Yeah.
the troll
She's,
who showed his butt. Yeah.
she's the one who has a PhD in porn.
Oh, okay, but she wasn't in the three-way. That was someone else.
Right. No,
Yeah.
that was another Moms for Liberty.
We don't want to get sued for libel. Anyway, leader Moms for Liberty leader Jennifer Pippin said the Anne Frank graphic novel violated state standards to teach the Holocaust accurately. I'm sorry, how can a first-hand account of someone who actually experienced the Holocaust violate state standards to teach the Holocaust? Like that is just complete, just
Yeah, that makes zero sense.
yeah, idiocy is what I was gonna say. I almost said idiocracy because, but that's the movie. But it
No,
worked.
yeah, it's sad. Well, these people also denied that the Holocaust happened, so
Yeah,
it nothing surprises me
that's true.
when it comes to them.
But so I think like part of the problem they have with the illustrated version, obviously, is that it sort of, literally paints a picture. And Anne does talk about sex in the diary because she's like such a wise teenage girl. And the way that she talks about sex is definitely not the way that I've heard teenagers talk about sex because she's not a typical teenager.
Right.
She spent her formative years in an annex hiding from Nazis who were going to persecute her and her family for being Jewish. And so, that wisdom or that, yeah, that forced maturity uh,
Right.
is definitely revealed in her writing. And so the way she talks about sex is definitely, I mean, I read it and I was like, that's the best description of a vulva that I've ever read.
Right.
Because we just talked to Dr. Richmond about vulvas in our sex education episode. It was all about vaginas. If you're interested, you should definitely go back and check out that episode. But let me
It was,
let me find the description
yeah,
and
yeah. Because I think that is an issue that the teachers, one of the reasons the teacher got fired. While you look for it, I'll say what they were
okay.
having an issue with. Let's see. Eighth grade students were reportedly shown a section of the graphic novel where Frank reflected on her own genitals and wanted to see a female's friend's breasts.
Oh yeah, I remember.
That seems to be a huge issue for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Discussions of sexuality were included in the original written version of Anne Frank's diary, but were edited out in subsequent reprints.
Interesting. I mean, because these are my point is these are her words. This is a
Right.
firsthand account. If
Yeah.
it happens to also tell you about biology, then so be it. Okay, I found it. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So it's a diary entry, Friday, March 24th, 1944, kind of towards the end. And at this point, she has formed somewhat of a relationship with Peter, who is the son of like another Jewish family that is hiding in the annex. And she thinks she's in love with him, um, but really they just have a very special friendship. And she starts her entry out basically saying like I don't think Peter knows like what girls look like down there because and she makes a good point. We know what boys look like down there because it's all just out in the open. Whereas girls it's sort of hidden. So if you just look at a picture, you can see the male genitalia a lot in more detail than the female genitalia.
Right.
So she's just sort of like pondering that and so she decides that she's going to just describe it herself. So here it is. How on earth can you explain what it all looks like without any models? Shall I try anyway? Okay, here goes. When you're standing up, all you see from the front is hair. Between your legs, there are two soft, cushiony things, also covered with hair, which press together when you're standing, so you can't see what's inside. They separate when you sit down, and they're very red and quite fleshy on the inside. In the upper part, between the outer labia, there's a fold of skin that, on second thought, looks kind of like a blister. That's the clitoris. Then come the inner labia, which are also pressed together in kind of a crease. When they open up, you can see a fleshy little mound no bigger than the top of my thumb. The upper part has a couple small holes in it, which is where the urine comes out. The lower part looks as if it were just skin, and yet that's where the vagina is. You can barely find it because the folds of skin hide the opening. The hole's so small, I can hardly imagine how a man could get in there, much less how a baby could come out. It's hard enough trying to get your index finger inside. That's all there is, and yet it plays such an important role. Yours, Anne M. Frank. So, I
Like
mean, it's
that's
purely biological.
right. I don't see like an eighth grader should know this.
Exactly. And if they don't, then there's a problem.
Right.
And maybe this should be discussed in a health class, but I think that that's why books are so amazing because they don't just talk about one thing. And in education, if you can combine topics like such as English and literature, then students are going to find way more relevancy and do much or be way more successful in
Right.
understanding those that content. And the same goes for history and sex or art and sex education, right?
Right.
And in the picture, so I can show you, this is the graphic novel. It's just a picture of Anne, um, showing Peter a picture of just like a bunch of circles.
Right.
It's not actually anything explicit. And then over here, it's just the male and female symbol.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not super,
yeah,
it's not anything just because it says graphic in the, graphic novel
yeah.
doesn't mean it's graphic, like explicit.
That's a good
Maybe
point.
they didn't get that memo.
Yeah, they think they're taking it so literally. But I'm even trying to find the one where she wants to show her breasts to her friend. There's nothing graphic there. Um,
And it's just curiosity, normal
yeah.
teenage curiosity about your body and what other people's bodies look
Yeah,
like. That is
exactly.
so normal.
And of course, mom groups like Moms for Liberty are just adding to the stigmatization. I don't know if that's a
Right.
word, but of sex and sex education, which is what we talked about with Dr. Richmond. But I'm pretty sure that was the main reason why the graphic novel is being targeted way more than the actual diary of Anne Frank. But yeah,
Especially if the original work that is now published excluded that, which maybe
yeah,
it has. I'm not sure.
I know.
But
I really wish I had read the the original published
yeah,
diary first and then read this. And I think I did at one point, but I don't remember it. But yeah, I kind of want to go back and now read the diary of Anne Frank just
right,
and then see. But I mean it was a group project by the Anne Frank organization, and you know, everything in here reflects her diary. It's very authentic, is what I'm saying. So
right.
it should
Yeah,
not be censored.
I think taking things out like that changes her story, and
Mm,
we need the whole story, all of it, not just bits and pieces.
exactly. Yeah. Um, when I read this, so Anne has a sister named Margot, so she's older. It just reminded me so much of my girls, like my older and my younger. And because Anne, I'm pretty sure, and I want to be careful with my words here, but like, and obviously I should not be diagnosing anybody, but pretty sure she's neurodivergent.
I could see that. I could see like where you're getting, yeah,
If you
like
read this book, you're gonna
we're
be
not
like,
qualified to diagnose anyone, but I get what you're saying.
she's definitely got a touch of the ADHD because, and it just reminds me so much of my youngest because she's always constantly talking about how she's being compared to her perfect older sister and how her mother is constantly criticizing her and telling her to be quiet. And, not that I do that to my kids, but like I can see how the difference in personalities would cause, a lot of a challenge in growing up as a 13-year-old or as a teenager, by your without adding on to the fact that you're in an annex, which is like a tiny, tiny little apartment hiding out from the Nazis. So like a
Yeah.
real struggle.
And
Mhm.
I feel like that dynamic is like across the board. If you have an older sibling, it's very likely that they are the perfect child and you are not. Because I think it just works out that way. They
Yeah.
mature before you do, you get away with more things because you're the baby. Um,
Hmm.
like my older sister and I have that dynamic, I know that she can do no wrong in my mom's
Right.
eyes. At least that's how
Yeah.
I feel about it.
I would say
And
most sibling relationships.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like that translates to a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I hear, I have to remind myself and my listeners all the time, I am a cis white privileged female, but and still related I still relate to all the books that we read just because
Right,
it's not necessarily a mirror, it's more of a window.
right,
But like my point is good authors make their books relatable, and it is
right.
still very, it's relatable in certain ways for sure. And for me it was like, oh, I have a daughter who is like this, and I can
Yeah.
imagine if because it's important to put yourself in those shoes and think like, hey, how like this could happen to my family. Thank God it hasn't, but like just imagine it and have some empathy.
And nowadays, it's not hard to imagine,
Right.
you know, either being that family or being the family that's harboring another family in, an annex. I could see that happening today.
Right.
There are
And
some things happening in the United States today that
mhm,
is not the same, but we're seeing families being picked up. We're seeing groups of people being targeted, and it is, to me, leaning towards a very similar outcome if we
yeah.
don't put a stop to it soon.
And I'm so glad you said that because that's kind of like where I want to steer the direction. And the Holocaust obviously should never be compared to any other event because it is its own,
Right,
event in history as of immense tragedy and human suffering that took the lives of over 6 million Jews and more, uh, and millions of others in the war. And I think honestly that number might be wrong. Like I feel I read somewhere recently where like the 6 million number is much higher than we think. But that's just the number we were taught.
right,
Um, but this is all to say that like we're not saying that we're living in a Holocaust.
right.
That would be extreme. But it's important to reflect on the past and compare it to what we're seeing today so that we can prevent another type of Holocaust from occurring. But I do want to talk about that. And so when you said, we're kind of seeing some parallels here, did you see the Instagram post of Trump's face hanging from the Department of Agriculture? The huge,
Oh no, I didn't see that one.
so it's the USDA building, US Department of Agriculture building. At first, I was like, is that the library? Because it like looks like it's a beautiful like government building, and it's just like a huge banner of his face just hanging from. And so that's to me very Hitler, very dictatory,
Right.
and all the other things that you said, such as the illegal kidnapping and unlawful deportation of people without due process
Right.
into things that are concentration camps. Because if you break down the word concentration camp, I mean,
But Seacott.
it's CCOT. It's a high concentration of people in a small place, because they are brown or they are a certain religion.
You
Um,
also see the parallel in Gaza
yes.
and what's
Yeah.
happening there and how they moved everyone into these restricted areas. Same thing. I mean, I see it, it's not just here in the United States. We're seeing it a lot across
Hmm.
different areas, and
Yeah.
it's
That.
very sad that we don't learn
Hmm.
from history. We just keep repeating the same mistakes, and damn it, like it's so frustrating.
Hmm.
That's why books like these are important. Like,
Yeah. That brings me to a very good point. I want to show you on page 7 of this. You can see the picture. Um, this middle picture here, right here.
that's why that picture you just mentioned was relevant.
Yeah, because you can see the signs, like, but instead of the Nazi symbol, it's like Trump's face.
Right,
But I'm sure Hitler's face was somewhere, but in this particular page, it's just the swastikas. But it
right.
does say, I want to read the text that goes along with it. When the Nazis came to power, their aim was to remove the Jews from German society. Even though Jews were less than 1% of the population, the Nazis believed we were the root of all evil. What does that sound like to you? The 1%? Trans people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What I mean, I don't know. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I do know that like the person, this just reminded me of like less than 3% of athletes are trans athletes. Yet here we are like spending all of our time and effort and energy and resources into what preventing trans athletes from existing.
Right,
And again, not saying that all the trans athletes are going to be rounded up and gassed in, concentration camps. But this is a very difficult conversation to have. But what we are saying is like reading books like this is very important in times like today, so that we can say, hey, wait a second, that sounds way too familiar.
way too familiar. And the thing is, yeah, they might not get rounded up and put into a concentration camp, but they are being put in danger with
Hmm.
the retail that is being spewed.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
not just trans people that get affected, because we see women who, born women, but because they have masculine features or short hair or dress certain way, are now being targeted as well. I just saw a case. Did you see that
I
in
don't know,
the
which one are you
hotel?
going to say?
It was a couple, and they went
Yep.
into a hotel to use the restroom, or I don't know if they were staying there, but
It was a
um,
gay couple, and I guess
yes,
like they had masculine features, and they were at like a horse race. Like they had paid for tickets and they were there, and they were, like trying to enjoy themselves. And then
yep. And then the funniest thing, not funny, but it was a male security guard who came into the bathroom to escort the woman using the women's bathroom out.
And her pants were around her ankles. It was a humiliating, traumatizing experience for her and her partner. Thank God the guy was fired. And they said they were going to donate, the hotel said they were going to donate money on May 12th. I don't know if they did. I don't know why it was such a specific date, but they're like, we are going to donate money to an LGBTQ organization on May 12th. We're so sorry this happened. That security guard has been relieved of his duties. But it doesn't matter because this is the society or the culture that we have
Right.
cultivated or that MAGA has cultivated.
Yeah.
So that's just one of the parallels. And like in what you said about um drawing parallels to Palestine, I watched the or I recently watched a documentary, what is it? I'm blanking right now, but it's there's no other land. The Yeah,
That's
and
the one that won the Emmy or the Grammy.
yep, it won
Okay.
a, God, we're terrible at this.
I don't watch my I don't watch award shows.
Uh, oh no.
It
Uh,
was something popular.
yeah, it won. Drum roll, please. Shit, where is it? Best documentary feature at the 97th Academy
Academy
Awards.
Award. Okay.
I knew it wasn't Grammy because Grammy is gramophone, which is like
This is
record
music.
music. Yeah. Emmy, I don't know what the fuck that is, but this won an Academy Award on March 2nd, 2025. It highlights the struggles of Palestinians in the West Bank, but it was before. It was like it was the end of the movie was right as the October Hamas incident attack.
Okay.
But anyway, in that movie or in that documentary, they slowly start taking away things like their cars, and they don't have any way to get around. And that's what is happening, or what happened early on,
Right.
to Anne Frank's family. They weren't allowed to drive, they weren't allowed to ride in the trams. They had to
Hmm.
walk everywhere. And so that's literally happening right now in Palestine. And again, very complicated conversation to talk about, the Israeli occupation in Palestine,
Right.
because Jewish people moved to Israel because of the Holocaust. And it's definitely not as simple as that. We do have a
Right.
full episode of that called the Nakba, Nakba, where we do go into greater detail about the complication of Nakba, which is
Right.
the Palestinian word for Holocaust. So if you are interested in learning more about that, I would recommend that you listen to that episode because we talk in great detail about that. So, but we're just going to talk about the Diary of Anne Frank today. But also, we talked about this with Jack, the burning of any books that have to do with the Jewish culture,
Right.
or even go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No.
Well, he was mentioning the museum, which I've seen pictures of. It's just like you're walking and there's like a window in the floor and you look down and it's an empty library. Uh,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where they burned all the books here. And she talks about that in her diary. Um, but also we've read a few books or we've talked about a few books where like not only wasn't just Jewish books, it was any books that discussed gender identity,
it was a lot of
sexual
medical
orientation.
journals that
Mm-hmm.
were burned and they had to do with the trans community.
Yep. And
So,
yeah, here it is happening again with the erasure of all the data, or the attempted erasure of all the data on the CDC websites about all the studies that have been done regarding gender identity and gender fluidity.
and because part of what they did initially, right, is they went after people who had disabilities or who were part of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
And then they went after the Jewish people, correct?
Yeah.
Or it might have been around the same time. But what we're seeing that again today, where they are going after people who have autism.
Hmm.
They're going after people who are trans, and
Taking away healthcare from the people that need it the most.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's
So those are the parallels that we are drawing. And also, again, one of the dozens, hundreds of reasons why books like this are so important.
yeah.
Another parallel that you can't deny was on page 38, where it shows a picture of Nazis taking someone away. And Anne can see this from her window. Sorry, it's so blurry. I think if I get really close, you can sort of see. But
Yeah, I see it.
so Anne can see this from her window. Can you hear my dog barking? Stop it. Shh, shh, come here. And it says, today, Meep told us some terrible news from the real world. She saw her Jewish neighbor taken away by the Gestapo and she could do nothing to help her. And we're seeing that, right? And what came
With
to
the
mind,
ice raids.
yeah, specifically was the 16-year-old daughter and her mom, who had to take her mom's infant, so her little sister.
And then
Out.
they slammed that girl to the ground.
Hmm.
It's
And she had her little sister in her arms, and she tried to stand in front of the cop car to stop them from taking her mom. And then they tried to charge her with child endangerment, which is just horrendous.
who put the child in danger first?
Exactly.
I'd say it was ICE.
And I've heard of instances too. I think a man was unlawfully deported, and his 12-year-old son was just left behind.
Oh my God, I just saw that. So
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a son. I just knew that ICE left a 12-year-old child on the street. And immediately my mind was like, my son is 12.
Yeah.
I was pissed off, like
Yeah.
ready to fight someone because the bus didn't let him on the other day because he didn't have his ID.
Hmm.
And I was like, so you're just going to leave my kid at school, not knowing if he's got a ride home? Like, there's a reason he rides the
Hmm.
bus, right?
Right. Oh my gosh. That's
So
so
I was,
scary.
and he was still at school, and I was fuming. Imagine just leaving him on a random street.
Oh, the trauma. Like these are babies. Like you don't understand. Like Anne is 13 in this book, and just starting to read at the beginning, like her interest at the beginning it's very obvious that she's a baby. She's a child.
Right.
Because
Yeah, that.
and
So where's all the, save the children people?
mhm,
Like, where are you? Because you were very loud about saving children, and you are so silent now that
mhm.
these children are being put in danger.
Yeah,
Like
it's awful. And
a
like who
12-year-old on
knows?
the street who just
Yep.
had his father taken from him.
I mean, hopefully it's a developing story. Well, I'll make a note to sort of keep tabs on that, and also the daughter. Um, I'll keep tabs on because there's a couple stories, like the Andre.
I think it's Andre. I'm not sure either
I
because
can't even say
the
that.
Y at the end
Yeah.
is
I
not.
want to Anyway, I want to keep tabs on his situation, on Brego Garcia. I want to keep tabs on the 16-year-old girl and her infant sister, and now this 12-year-old boy. So, I mean, and also I think in the show notes, I do have GoFundMe's for some of these people. If anyone's listening and feels the need to donate, I will put those in the show notes too.
Yeah, that's great.
But anyway, back to the book. I want to read the third paragraph of one of her diary entries that because it just resonated with me. She says, "No matter what I'm doing, I can't help thinking about those who are gone. I catch myself laughing and remember that it's a disgrace to be so cheerful. But I am supposed to spend the whole day crying? No, I can't do that. This gloom will pass." And I think that just is like a really good paragraph that sort of like sums Anne up as a person because she's a really deep feeler, but she's
Right.
also just so optimistic.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be optimistic in days like these.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something we need to remember too. Like, we have to focus on the good things that are happening around us so we don't lose hope completely. And it's hard to do. I can't imagine how she was doing that because,
Yeah,
like,
because
we're just watching the news and we're like,
I
oh,
know.
depressed.
I know. I'm like,
She's
geez.
actually dealing with something that's really horrible, living it. I mean, we're
Yes,
living it, but it hasn't been to our doorstep yet. We're just afraid of it reaching us, but
yeah,
we're still living our lives pretty normally.
yeah,
Um, but we're consuming all this media and seeing everything
mhm,
that's happening around us, and we're like, this sucks. I
yes,
want off this ride.
right.
Imagine her, like
Mm-mm.
how she stayed positive is,
Yeah. How she stayed positive because in like with the incessant bombs and gunfire and sirens, and not only that, the rotting food in their annex with the sheets and the clothes and the linens that can never be washed, the rats that are, infesting their attic. Like, um, she it this book the adaptation anyway, does a really good job at you know, kind of describing her anxiety. And like they show how like they have to give her I think what was it, like valerian root at night to help her sleep, like a really heavy dose of valerian
yeah,
root. And she wakes up to sirens, and she's constantly packing her getaway bag in case they have to run away. And she does seek comfort in her dad, and like the pictures, which another reason why I love this graphic novel is because it shows her like crawling in bed with her dad and her dad just like hugging her and comforting her, which like obviously you don't get that without a graphic novel, but like the image is just really strong.
Yeah.
I don't know, I really appreciated that because she does have a special relationship with her dad because she has a very estranged relationship with her mom.
Because of the relationship with her sister.
I think so.
Her
I think
thing.
it's mainly because she's so ADHD, for lack of a better word. And can you imagine like raising a an ADHD like hyperactive child in the 40s when they're in an annex where you're supposed to be quiet so that the Nazis don't find you out.
Right.
She's labeled as like a bad kid. And so
It's also the teenage years.
yeah.
There's the mood swings they go
Yep.
through. It's always a tough
Hmm.
stage between mother and teenage daughter.
Hmm.
Even when you come through it at the other side of it, you end up closer than ever.
Yeah.
But those years are tough.
And she did. And so as another thing I loved about this book was the evolution of their relationship. It wasn't at like what you said, it wasn't as like loving, but she just starts to, as she gets older and more mature, she's like, well, I can understand why my mother acted that way because of the situation we were all in. And so she kind
Yeah.
of forgives her mom for that. But it's still never like lovey like the way she is with her dad. But even that relationship changes because she's sort of mad at her dad for not like helping her through her struggles. I mean, he helped her in the sense of like hugging her when she was scared, but she kind of needed a little bit more than that. Um, so yeah. I mean, it's just a lot of growth on her part, and this adaptation does a really good job at capturing that growth from like 12 to 14. Um, so more than anything, it's like a book about growing up.
Yeah.
Hmm.
In a really tough place.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see a reason to ban books like these.
I
I mean,
know.
I don't see a reason to ban any book,
Right.
but books like these, it's something that happened. It's something we need to learn about.
Hmm.
Um, so what? She talked about a vulva
I know.
and a
God.
clitoris. Like women have those.
Like here's what you have to like you always say, what's the context, but also like what's the rest of the book about? Like, yeah,
Right.
there's one tiny paragraph where she describes a vulva, but what about this paragraph, which just blew me away? Let's see, page 107. I'm looking at my notes. Okay. So she's talking about this goes back to like how her and her mother like do not see eye to eye and they have different um I don't know, beliefs, I guess, but she says this is where mother and I differ greatly. Her advice in the face of melancholy is think about all the suffering in the world and be thankful you're not part of it, which, you know, as a mother, I feel like I've said that to some degree before. And then Anne says, my advice is go outside to the country, enjoy the sun and all nature has to offer. Go outside and try to recapture the happiness within yourself. Think of all the beauty in yourself and everything around you and be happy. I don't think mother's advice can be right because what are you supposed to do if you become part of the suffering? You'll be completely lost. On the contrary, beauty remains even in misfortune. If you just look for it, you discover more and more happiness and regain your balance. A person who's happy will make others happy. A person who has courage and faith will never die in misery. That's
Yeah.
like so deep for a 14-year-old.
It's so deep. And I totally like having you read that. I totally get the mom and where she's coming from because now we're mothers, so we kind of can
Mm,
step in that role. And I can see why the mom says and does the things that she does.
yeah.
And I can see how the daughter takes it the wrong way. Books like this make me also like realize, okay, I have to watch what I say to my kids sometimes
Yes.
because I mean one thing, and clearly by the way they take it, they took it a completely different way.
Yeah.
Like I have to watch my words.
What an amazing parenting moment that I never thought that I would get from reading the Diary of Anne Frank. Like I have said that to my kids. Like
Right,
the most like cliche example that comes to mind is like eat your food. There's starving children in Africa, like um that doesn't help, you know.
right,
Like we
right.
think it does, but clearly, from what I just read, it's not what kids need to hear.
And it's funny because our parents used to tell us that, and we'd be like, "Ugh, we get it."
Right,
But yet here we are doing it again.
right. Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, we don't learn from our mistakes either.
Right. Well, we can break the cycle. We can do
Yeah,
it. We can do it. We can do it together, everyone.
I do try. Like, I'll say it, and I'm like, okay, listen, I know that, and my kids will be like, "Mom, it's not like they could eat this food anyways. It's not gonna make it to them." And I'm like, yes, and I do get that, but it's more about you appreciating what you have,
Mhm.
and being considerate of what's in front of you and not being wasteful just because you can be. Like,
Exactly.
just
Yeah. Yeah. We're
because
not
you
saying
can
that we
have
should
it
waste
today,
food
but
all the time.
tomorrow,
Mhm.
it might not be there. So we do like expand on the conversation a little bit more. They still
Right.
roll their eyes at me and are like, whatever, mom.
Right, right, right.
It
Yeah.
does stick also. I think in that moment when we're that age, it doesn't stick. But
Mhm.
later on, as adults, we're like, yeah, I remember. I get why my mom said that now.
Yeah. My daughter, I think, is like, she's like, Mom, I understand why you want us to split things at restaurants now. I'm like, thank Christ, because
Right.
like you can't spend $20 on a meal that you're gonna eat two bites of. Like,
Right. Oh my God, it drives me so
I
crazy.
know. Yeah. Like it actually that just happened today when I was visiting my sister. I was like, you need to get one hot dog. And she's like, no,
Right.
I'm gonna get two hot dogs for each boy. And they each had one bite of their hot dogs. And meanwhile, I have three kids that are sharing one basket of chicken tenders.
Right.
You each get one chicken tender.
And they won't eat anymore. Like if you buy them each their own meal, they won't finish it. My kids are finally at the age where they eat more,
Hmm.
but sometimes I'll be like, listen, you just had a bunch of snacks at home. You're not going to
Hmm.
eat a full course meal.
Yeah. Have an appetizer.
Order from the kids section still,
Yes.
But
Yes.
then now they're like, oh, I don't want to do that, because I'm a teen. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no,
Oh.
do it because I'm not paying $25 for
No.
this. And
Yeah.
I keep telling my husband that too. I'm like, can we not stop taking them out to dinner with us? But
Yeah.
if we're gonna go to a restaurant that doesn't have like kiddish friendly food,
We
it
need to
is
split.
pointless to bring them.
Yeah.
They're
True.
they are happier staying home with a pizza,
Yes, I
and
agree.
they'll actually eat that,
Yep.
and we can actually eat this fancier food that they're not gonna like.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
they'll order something because they're curious, like, oh, I want to try it.
Hmm.
And then the whole like $25 plate is just sitting there full because they're like, yeah, it didn't taste good. Because
Mm-mm.
they're not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, they're not there yet. And unfortunately, you gotta like live it a few times before it really sinks in your but there are people that just like do it's I think the definition Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is just like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's kind of sometimes how I feel about like going out to eat. I'm like, I feel like I'm going insane because like this keeps happening and
Right.
we're not changing our ways. And some people never do. And that analogy can be applied to many different things in
Yeah.
and in life. It's just the whole adage of know better, do better. So,
Yep.
but anyway, that was a fun little tangent about food.
Yeah.
But going back to her wisdom, like she's such an amazing, like, and obviously, like, if you have all this time to be, because all they did was read books and like educate themselves, which is why she knew so much about the female anatomy,
Right.
and obviously she has her own vulva, so she knows what it looks like, but she read about the names of things in medical books,
Right. And
like
she used the right terminology for
yeah,
it.
she really did. Yeah. But in addition to becoming really smart, you have a lot of time to reflect. And so here's her reflection on war. And her diary's name is Kitty. I should point that out because instead of saying Dear Diary, she says, Dearest Kitty, as you can no doubt imagine, we often say in despair, what's the point of the war? Why, oh, why can't people live together peacefully? Why all this destruction? And I'm like, yeah, I'm right there with you. Tell me why. She goes on to say, there's a destructive urge in people, the urge to rage, murder, and kill. And until all of humanity, without exception, undergoes a metamorphosis, wars will continue to be waged, and everything that has been carefully built up, cultivated, and grown will be cut down and destroyed only to start all over again, which
Mm.
is really sad and pessimistic, but also like really true.
Yeah. I mean, it's accurate.
Hmm. And this
She
is
was
a time.
young and she nailed it because we're seeing it.
Mhm. This next part is really sad because this is sort of like at a time where she's sort of feeling down. But she's reflecting and sort of growing up. That's part of growing up is accepting that the world isn't it's all sunshine and rainbows. And she goes on to say, I've often been down in the dumps, but never desperate. I look upon our life in hiding as an interesting adventure, full of danger and romance, and every privation as an amusing addition to my diary. I've made up my mind to lead a different life from other girls and not to become an ordinary housewife later on. What I'm experiencing here is a good beginning to an interesting life. And that's the reason, the only reason, why I have to laugh at the humorous side of the most dangerous moments. And obviously,
Made me so sad to think that she was thinking of her life and like what she was gonna do in the future, and she didn't get that.
so
That
sad.
is, yeah.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the like, or that's the end. Because, Hitler's assassination attempt occurs sort of around that time that she wrote that journal entry. This assassination attempt was actually by a Nazi, which I feel like is a tidbit that we don't always like remember when we're
Yeah,
taught about this for the 2 weeks that we're taught about this in eighth grade.
right.
Um, so like a Nazi stood up to Hitler and they tried to kill him, but it didn't work. And again, I know this is like a drastic parallel, but like this is why Republicans aren't filing for impeachment. Like
Right.
they're afraid.
Yeah.
And they're afraid because they're being threatened. Wasn't someone like, didn't some asshole use the signal chat, the same one that Pete Hegseth used to reveal the, war details, to talk about how Republicans who don't align with Trump's policies should be publicly flogged? Did you not see that?
No, I haven't seen that. Or I might have, and I see so much that I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
get, but I mean, I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it may have, you can probably argue like, oh, they were exaggerating or whatever. Like,
Joking.
I'm, that's not something to joke about. Like, if you don't say, oh, vote for what I say, or I'm going to publicly flog you, ha ha ha. Like,
And the thing is, with this administration, everything is a joke,
yeah,
right? Haha, I just said we're just playing, but it's really we're just throwing it out there to see how you react to it,
right. Mm-hmm.
and see what I can get away with. Do my supporters, do they rally around me and say, "Oh yeah, I like that idea," or will they be like, I don't like that, and then they're like, "Oh, well, it was just a joke,"
Right, which is
I was just playing.
gaslighting because then
Right.
they just do it anyway. It's like, oh, well, I'm not gonna get your support on this, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Right.
And also I was joking, but I wasn't joking. Like it's just gaslighting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Another a final parallel that I feel the need to mention is the lack of due process that we're seeing, which is unconstitutional. And federal judges have said that time and time again that um, you know, these immigrants, if you will, that deported are being deported illegally because they're not given due process. And had they been given due process, a great deal of them would be able to stay because they are here legally.
Right.
And that is the same in Nazi Germany. There's there's no due process. You're Jewish and you're gone,
Right.
right?
Right. We're seeing that. It's not people who are here illegally that are being deported. It's people who are going to their immigration appointment. You go
Yeah.
to an immigration appointment because you are doing things the correct way, or you're attempting to do it by the book.
Mm-hmm.
To show up to your immigration appointment and then be taken from there and deported is
Kidnapped.
wild to me. Kidnapped. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard not to draw parallels, honestly, to this. I mean, sure, there aren't any gas chambers right now, and the numbers are, obviously not the same, but it's like we said at the episode, it's important to address the elephant in the room, as scary as that might be, and as hard of a conversation that might be. It's important to have that conversation.
Did I mention it here? I don't remember if it was a conversation I had with you or with my husband. But they are sending letters out across the board just to people
Mm-mm.
and giving them 30 days to self-deport.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
But these letters are being sent to US citizens. Like, not like I can understand if I got a letter, with my Hispanic last name sort of deal, but we're talking about someone like Lydia Smith,
Campbell.
American, decades of generations of family who've been here getting letters like that.
Yeah,
It's like just throwing it out, see who will t get a letter and be like, "Oh yeah, I need to go," and just leave. And I'm like, how does that happen? Like, how inept is this administration that it's doing that?
yeah.
Or are they doing it on purpose just to see what sticks, you
That's
know?
a good question. It's a question of ineptitude or just like extreme like I don't know, manipulation tactic. I don't know.
Yeah.
I it can't be both, right? Like it's one or the I don't know.
Right. Like, is he really smarter than we think?
We've
Or,
we've asked that question before. We don't know yet. I don't know because like
yeah,
he's such a moron.
right. But he gets away with so much. Like,
Oh, it's a true
how?
enigma. Truly an enigma.
And
And
then the big slap in the face now is after not allowing refugees in, suddenly we're allowing white South Africans.
I was just about to bring that up. That boils my blood. There is no genocide of white people in South Africa. That is a complete lie. They own 72% of the farmland. Okay. And they account for like 7% of the population.
Right.
That makes no sense. And the reason they own all that farmland is because of apartheid and all the
Right.
shit that went down there. They just took it. And so
Yeah.
now they're having to deal with the consequences of that and they're acting like they're persecuted when they're not.
Yeah. They're playing the victim. It
Mhm.
is wild.
Yes.
But
And
like, could he make it any clearer that this is about race? It keeps happening, and I'm like, do you get it now?
yeah.
Do you get it now? And I'm like, do you get it now? And I'm starting to see a shift. I think I said this last time too, with the Hispanic community that voted for him. Now they're waking up, and now I'm like, you're in the find out stage. I
hmm
told you this was going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you this. I had my husband's cousin, they know that I'm very anti-Trump. And so they like to poke fun at me or something. They think they rile me up. And I'm like, I don't care that you voted for Trump. I think you're an idiot for it. And it pisses me off,
hmm
but it's because you are playing with people's lives, lives that are similar to yours that you should have empathy for. And somehow you think you're not going to be affected. So Christmas Eve, this cousin called me like at 2 in the morning. He was like, they were at a Christmas party and I guess they were bored or something. They started calling people. So we had an early Christmas. So we were already sleeping. He calls me at 2 in the morning. And when I pick up, it's him like with his other family members and cousins. And he's like, Trump 2020, Trump 2020, ha ha ha.
Oh,
Like they
hmm
were pranking people. These are people in their
right.
40s, by the way. Like
Oh
they're
my. I was like,
I
okay.
guess he was thinking he was like getting me or something. I was like, I don't care. I was like, uh-huh. I hung up and I just went back to sleep. I
Right.
could care less. Like
hmm
I was like, we'll see what happens later on, right?
Right.
Well, come now, he calls my husband and he's telling him, "Oh, like, do you know this guy? It's a friend that we had. He's being deported."
Oh,
And I was like, call him back and tell him he voted for that.
did he?
Let him know he voted for.
Did he call him back and tell him that?
I don't know if he did, but
Okay.
Gus was like, "Oh, you see, Jenny was right. She's been right."
Mm.
Now Gus is very much on, I'm right. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I I told you. Like
And
I
your marriage is doing
told
much
you
better now.
so. Yes. But like I keep like I'm always like
I told you.
I did tell
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You guys thought it was funny that I was being dramatic or this or that.
Here you
I
go.
wasn't being dramatic enough. Like this is a lot worse than I thought it was going to be.
It could have been prevented too, which is
Yeah.
so just infuriating. Yeah.
Yeah. So now he's like, "Oh yeah, it's messed up." Why do you have to wait for it to be someone you know? Why do you have to
Yeah.
wait for it to affect you personally?
That's always been something that I am confused about and have the same questions about. It's like and growing up, like you see that in many different situations. It's like why does this have to affect you personally for you to care?
Right.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks.
Well, so to kind of like wrap up the whole diary segment of this, I think the diary serves many purposes. Like one, obviously like we said, to be a firsthand account of the atrocities in, Nazi Germany, but also to offer a glimpse inside the world of a wise, beyond her years, creative and hilarious teenage girl. Uh, you know, that begs the question, like, what beautiful impact, in addition to her diary, would she have left on the world had she not been stolen by the Nazis? So that's the second purpose I believe that this
Yeah.
diary serves. But then there's a third purpose that I think, and it's to remind us that these injustices are continuing to happen, but for reasons that we've talked about before and that I cannot explain, other than the evil greed of politicians and the desensitization and the apathy of the people controlled by them. This isn't like these injustices, such as the genocide in Gaza and the war in Ukraine and the genocide in Sudan, are not being talked about, or we're not responding to them in the same way that we did in World War II. And
Right.
I'm not saying it's as simple as go and invade and stop the bad guys. I know it's not that simple, but what about the diaries of all the Palestinian and Syrian and Venezuelan and Ukrainian and Sudanese children? The death of a child is the death of infinite possibilities. And
Yeah.
I think that this diary is a very stark reminder of that.
Absolutely. I agree.
Hmm. And I could give you statistics, but it's kind of a bummer. Uh, but I feel like it's necessary. So I'm going to give you a couple of statistics. So be forewarned, these statistics are not super fun, but right now in Palestine, it's estimated that over 100 children are killed or injured every day.
A
With
day.
Yeah, a day, with
Wow.
17,000 being killed or injured since October 7th, 2023. And in Ukraine, it's estimated that at least 16 children are killed or injured every week as Putin's war still rages on. And in Syria, it's estimated that more than 20,000 children have been killed as a result of conflict since March of 2023, with the rate of child malnutrition nearly tripling since 2019. And the largest and most devastating, Sudanese children are subjected to murder. And if they're not murdered, sexual violence, forced recruitment into armed groups, hunger and famine, and disease as the conflict there rages since 2023. And of course, that's not to say that things aren't happening in other countries
Right.
like in Hungary or Romania or Venezuela, and even in America, where every time a Black mother gives birth, her baby is twice as likely to die before their first birthday compared to white babies. So all of these children could have diaries like Anne Frank, but
Right.
if they do, we're not going to read them, or we're not going to uplift them, which is why this one is so important to protect and to uplift.
That's a lot of children that are not with us anymore. And where are we? What are we doing for them? Nothing. We have done nothing to prevent this from happening. We are not doing anything still.
Hmm.
Well, I think we're doing something, just not the right thing.
Right. Conversations like Jack are so important, and
Yeah.
conversations, in Gen Z for Change is such an important group that hopefully will be the future of change in the digital movement that he was describing, because things are so digital now, and
Yeah.
it's hard to ignore the things that are happening all around the world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Man.
should we end with like a happy story, a 5-star story, or
Do you have one? I don't.
I think we can find one. Hold on. Okay, I found one. This is from on Instagram. It's like a collaboration post from Dear White Staffers, the 50-51 movement, resist, rise up, and more. And it is college graduates walk out as MAGA Republican governor speaks. And it's just a video of everyone getting up and just like walking out as he stands up to talk about I don't know, who the hell knows. So, I mean, you know, it's kind of it's cool to see like the young people being like fuck
Yes.
this, like we're done. We're over it. Yeah. So,
I love that they're doing that. And I did see a few videos of that, and someone made a comment and it said these are the kids that had their high school experience ruined by COVID.
right.
And
Yeah.
now they have their college graduation experience ruined by
MAGA.
having these people as the speakers. But
Right.
kudos to them for doing what's
Hmm.
right and walking out.
Yeah.
So,
What's yours?
okay, so I love this one because it just brings me a lot of joy. Um, so I have been hearing about Nashville having a lot of restaurants closed due to ICE raids. Uh, as we know, Tennessee is a very red state, so but one of those restaurants apparently is Kid Rock's restaurant. So it is reported that a Nashville restaurant owned by MAGA musician Kid Rock reportedly closed over the weekend to avoid the Trump's administration ICE raid. Nashville Scene reported that Kid Rock's Big A Honky Tonk Rock and Roll Steakhouse in Tennessee shuttered after employees unauthorized to work in the U.S. failed to show up for work on Saturday, and those that had turned up were told any undocumented workers should leave the premises to avoid getting caught by ICE.
Wow.
So, I mean,
I wonder
I'm
what
not
Kid Rock
happy
thinks
for
of
the
that.
raids, but
No,
I love that Kid Rock's restaurant had a
restaurant.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he's a big MAGA guy, and
Yeah. And I'm glad that like they were the people that worked there were given like a warning at least.
yeah,
Yeah. And
I
of
don't think that came
course,
from, but it also like shows the hypocrisy of
yeah,
a lot of MAGA. They love to talk negatively about immigrants, undocumented immigrants, but they will be the first ones to employ them, and
exactly.
you know, well,
Hypocrisy at its finest. Well, there were your two five-star stories, hopefully to help add a little bit of for lack of a better word, cheer to
yeah.
this episode.
Mine, I
We'll
don't know
just
if it
call
was
it
a five-star
cheer.
story, but I sure made me
No,
feel good to
I
see
love it. You know,
that.
that's what we need, things that make us feel good. But in the meantime, don't ban books.
Ban bigots. This episode has been engineered and mixed by your hosts, Jennifer and Courtney.
You can listen to the Milford Books podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, or literally any podcast app you want.
If you want to watch the podcast, check out our Milford Books YouTube page. That's MILF, the number 4, books. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Follow the show on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky at MILF for Books. Again, that's MILF, the number 4, books. But follow us on TikTok at Moms Until Literary Freedom.
Thanks for listening.